Hello and welcome to this video on business growth. Many businesses in the UK started from humble origins. For example, this market stall in Leeds has grown to become Marks & Spencer's. This business started off selling tea and was originally a store in 1929 and has now grown into the multinational Tesco. And this business over here began in the 1970s and has grown to become Virgin Group. It's true that many businesses seek to grow, and that's what we're going to be looking at in this video. Before we get on to that, how would we go about measuring the size of a business? Well, some concepts we might use would be revenue, profit, value, market share, and volume. And by volume we mean maybe the number of units that the business sells. Our objectives in this video are to understand why companies want to grow. 1. Economies of scale. 2. Market power. 3. Market share. And 4. Profitability. Let's start off with economies of scale. Economies of scale arise when unit costs fall as output increases. So as we increase the scale of production, the average cost of producing each unit gets cheaper. So let's have a look at an example. In this scenario, we're going to assume fixed costs are £10,000, variable costs are £100 per unit. And if we have a look at how that would affect variable costs and fixed costs and therefore cost per unit, let's look at this table. So we can see on the left hand side, as output increases, fixed costs remain the same, variable costs would increase, total costs would increase, but look what's happening to the cost per unit. The cost per unit is going down as we increase the scale of production. So the cost of each unit, even though we're making more units, will decrease effectively because the fixed costs are spread over a large amount of units. So businesses may seek to achieve economies of scale through growth. Often this is presented to us as a cost curve. In this chart here we can see average cost per unit on the y-axis and the quantity of output on the x-axis, and we can see the cost curve here showing the average cost is going down as we increase the quantity of output. Now, why would you want to achieve economies of scale? Well, lower unit costs, producing something at a lower average cost, is important in making a business more competitive because it allows a business to do one of two things: either reduce prices whilst keeping the same profit margin, or maintain the same price, but if your costs are lower per unit, you'd be earning more profit per unit on the product. There are two types of economies of scale that we should be aware of: internal economies of scale, and that is falling unit costs enjoyed by the business as it increases in size, and external economies of scale, and these are falling unit costs that are enjoyed by all businesses in an industry as the industry increases in size rather than the individual business. There are three internal economies of scale that we need to know and be aware of. The first one is technical economies of scale, and this says that as a business increases in size, it can spread and buys more machinery, it can lead to a fall in average costs. So for example, a good example would be a larger shipping tanker. If you imagine a shipping tanker that had 100 units and one engine, well, the average cost would be the engine divided by the 100 units. But if you had a larger ship with 1,000 units, could carry 1,000 units, you still have the same engine perhaps, but the average cost would be the cost of the engine divided by 1,000 units. So as things get bigger, you get technical economies of scale. The second one is purchasing economies of scale, which is equivalent to bulk buying, getting a better deal, or negotiating a better position with suppliers as you place a larger order. And the last one is managerial economies of scale. Being of a certain size that you can employ specialists in a position who are efficient, do things more productively, and therefore lead to lower average costs. It might be worth pausing this now and jotting down the details. External economies of scale, again we've got three to learn. The first one is expertise. So if a particular area or region becomes associated with a particular industry, you find that people flock there to ply their trade. For example, banking in London, and if you're a business based in London, you do banking, you'll have a good pool of people that you can attract, and if they're efficient and good at that job, that should lead to a fall in unit costs. Also, the cost of recruiting them shouldn't be as high. The second is cooperation economies of scale. Cooperation between businesses on perhaps joint ventures may result in greater efficiencies, which would lower costs. And this has become because the industry or the number of firms within that industry has grown in that area. And the last one is support services. So these economies of scale result when businesses locate near to a particular industry. So for a good example would be the car manufacturing industry in the West Midlands. There are lots of suppliers like tyre manufacturers and component part manufacturers who locate nearby, and for the car manufacturer that is a good thing. It'll be lower cost of transport and so on. They benefit from that size of industry in the area and have lower average costs. Let's move on to number 2, market power. Now, being of a greater size may give a business more market power over its customers and suppliers, and this links well with Porter's 5 forces model of competition. Effectively, power over customers from size will enable a business perhaps to charge higher prices, or maybe would increase customers' brand loyalty with businesses. In terms of power over suppliers, people they buy their supplies from, a business might find has a stronger negotiating position. If it's a large business, think maybe Tesco's and farmers who supply milk, and may enable them to secure raw materials or perhaps outlets. For this, maybe think BP, because they're large, have a lot of influence, they can maybe secure exploration licenses from governments because of their size. Let's move on to market share. A large business, by definition, should see an increase in market share and therefore brand recognition. This should enable them to charge higher prices, saturate the markets or fill the market with their products, gain customer loyalty, and have a strong physical and promotional presence within that market. It should make it easier to launch new products in the future. And finally, profitability. How will being large affect profitability? Or maybe lower costs through economies of scale, which would increase profitability. Maybe the ability to charge higher prices through increased market power. Maybe increased productivity and efficiency. And this could be a virtuous circle. As a business grows and makes greater profits, it may generate more money so they can invest and innovate and further grow again. Indeed, when you look at many of the largest companies in the world, or the most profitable ones, they tend to be large companies. A general rule of thumb, as business size increases, we would expect profitability measured by gross profit margin to also increase. So we've looked at why companies would want to grow. They would want to get bigger to achieve economies of scale, to increase market power, to increase market share, and to increase profitability. That's it. Thank you.